All right, everybody, welcome back to the next edition of the Mark You Down for a Cup of Joe podcast. After a little bit of a hiatus, I'm Mark,
And I'm Joe.
and like as I mentioned, we had a little bit of a hiatus. It just kind of got busy where we were both out of town a bunch of times throughout the weeks. We weren't able to record, but we're still keeping track of our games, and just to put an end to the whole season thing. Joseph and I both, continued to send each other games and see who picked right. I ended up winning by 6, 7 games, so I kind of built that lead, relinquished it a little bit, got it back, and that puts me around the 130 mark in terms of games picked correct this year. So, congratulations to me. Congratulations to you, Joseph. I'm 100% sure you hit the 110 mark. We both did, which I think is a pretty high mark in any picking any games for an entire season. And we missed a week too, so let's give ourselves a little bit of congratulations there, and we'll tally those up a little bit later, give you the specific numbers. But I've got a very special episode for you guys today. And Joseph, do you want to tell the good listeners what we're going to be talking about today?
Oh, yes, Mark. It's playoff time. We're going to start getting into the games that matter right now. You know, should be fun one. We're going to be talking about the matchups this weekend. We got the AFC on Saturday and the NFC on Sunday. Lots of good matchups. I'm excited, Mark. I think we'll see lots of good games. Like, there are some really saucy matchups. I think these games are going to be really good.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this, most of the time, wild card weekends kind of like a little bit of a snooze fest. Because there's usually like a really good team going up against a really bad team.
Well,
Um,
I mean, when you
I
have
don't
a
think,
team like Minnesota and at like the 6th seed or whatever seed they are going up against the Saints. I mean, that's a matchup we typically see in the divisional round, but we got that on wild card weekend, so it's going to be
yeah,
exciting, Mark.
yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's jump right into it. But Joseph, we're not going to start with that game. We're going to start with the first game of Saturday. It's going to be the Buffalo Bills Mafia, going down into Houston to take on those Texans led by Deshaun Watson. Joseph, let's talk a little bit of a preview of this game. I know we haven't really done it this much in the season, but let's get your initial impressions on the game. What do you think about this one?
Ooh, I think this is a really interesting matchup for me. I really like both teams. I like the Bills. I like the Texans. I like Deshaun Watson. I like Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen has gotten a little bit too much hate this year. I think he actually had a pretty solid sophomore season in the NFL. So we get two really young, talented quarterbacks going head to head in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just go and start off with the Texans right here because I think this will be the big factor in this game, and it's going to be what they get from Deshaun Watson. And we've talked about it. We talked about it in the regular season, but he was a little hit or miss this year. He was a little inconsistent. He'd have a game where he'd throw for 5 touchdowns. Then the next game, it looked like he was playing, like a backup quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Um, wasn't showing as much consistency as I think we'd like to see from him. But if he goes out there and he balls out, I really think the Bills are going to have a hard time keeping up with that offense, to keep up with that firepower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna echo that thought. Let me flip to the other side of it. I guess my initial impression is this is a game of a better team going up against a better quarterback, and
Mm-hmm.
really that's kind of what this game's gonna come down to for me. I'm looking at that Buffalo front seven, and I'm seeing if they can put pressure on Deshaun Watson and that offensive line. I think that's the key to the game there. I think Deshaun Watson will be ready to play. It's just if that offensive line lets him down again, I think he's going to have a hard time making plays. And Buffalo's a tough team. Like Buffalo's one of those teams you don't want to see in the playoffs. They're very physical and they can beat you up and they can, win in with their defense and running game and quarterback making plays. But really, if Deshaun Watson has time to throw, I think Houston wins this game at home. But if Buffalo is able to get after the passer here, you know what? We could see the Bills Mafia moving on. So, that's kind of my key matchup to look for in this game. So let's get right into it. Houston is favored by 3 points, but Joseph, who are you picking to win this game?
You know what, Mark? I'm going to be going with the Buffalo Bills in this one, as surprising as that may be. Part of this is because I don't know what I'm going to get from Deshaun Watson. I know what he can do, but I just don't know if he's going to play up to that level, if he's going to play at that superstar level. And like we mentioned, this Buffalo defense is legit, and come playoff time, defense wins championships. This is a Buffalo defense that I think on average only gave up right around 17 points a game this year. And I see them really giving Deshaun Watson a hard time this week. So give me them Bills and that Bills Mafia.
Joseph, I'm taking the Houston Texans in this one. I know J.J. Watt's coming back. I think that's going to be a big invigorating factor for the Houston Texans. I know their secondary isn't that good, but Josh Allen isn't necessarily the best passer out there. I think there's going to be some opportunities missed in the passing game for Josh Allen. And I think that Houston at home, I think their offensive line is going to show up to play a little bit more. I know Buffalo's front seven is pretty good, but really they make their money in the secondary. If Deshaun Watson has time to move around and find receivers, I think he's going to get it done. So I have Houston winning at home in this one.
All right. So we differ right there. But this next one, I think, should be another saucy matchup, Mark. We got the Tennessee Titans going down to New England to play Bill Belichick and the Patriots. I'll let you get started on this one, Mark. What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts are, at least this week, I've been listening to a lot of sports personalities and sports people talk about the Patriots and how there's doom and gloom, how their dynasty's over, and they did just lose to the Miami Dolphins at home, but New England's one of those teams you kind of hear the expression, especially with LeBron-led teams in the NBA. There's a thing where LeBron can flip the switch come playoff time. I kind of feel the same way about the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I know they lost and it wasn't good, but the Dolphins have been playing pretty good football recently, and it was a close game. I do feel like they're going to flip a switch. I just think it's a different ball game, and really we know the Patriots for being successful in the postseason, so I think they're going to show up to play and look a lot better than they have in the past. So for me, I think the X factor in this game is going to be Stephon Gilmore versus A.J. Brown and that cast of Tennessee receivers. Stephon Gilmore has struggled a little bit towards the end of the year, but I think he does struggle with speedy receivers more than anything. And Devontae Parker was able to take advantage of him. I don't see A.J. Brown as a burner, so I think they're going to be able to take that away and really focus in and key in on stopping the run. Just being able to match up that way. So I think that's where the game's going to be won and lost for me. But anyways, Joseph, what do you think your impressions of this game are?
Me and you were on. I think me and you are going to differ on this one, Mark. I'm not riding high on the New England Patriots. Yes, they have a fantastic track record from the playoffs, but what I've seen from them this year, at least offensively, really has me concerned. And even defensively, they took advantage of some really, really bad teams towards the beginning of the season. And when it came time to play some, playoff caliber teams, they weren't as dominant. Still good, just not as dominant. And I look at this Tennessee Titans team right now and just how good they're playing right now. If you take away that bad start with Marcus Mariota, ever since Ryan Tannehill came in, they've only lost, I think, twice, and they've won 6 or 7 games. I forget how many games he started. And he's been playing lights out football. I mean, this is the Ryan Tannehill that everybody has been, kind of waiting for, been saying that this is, he's playing up to his potential finally.
Sorry,
and then
fans.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Derrick Henry over there who absolutely exploded the last half of the season, and I contribute that to a big passing game, to actually having a legit passing game with Tannehill back there. I just really have a hard time seeing the Patriots slowing all of that down, especially Derrick Henry. I think the Titans are going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. They got a big physical offensive line. Derrick Henry's a big physical runner. I think they're going to be able to control the line, get him going, which is going to make Tannehill's life easier. And New England just isn't going to be able to keep up offensively.
All right, so I guess I'm taking the Patriots. You're taking the Titans, and just of note, we are both opposing on our picks in the playoffs. This isn't very common. We have the same picks, and you're taking both the road teams at this point. I'm taking both of the home teams, so we shall see how that plays out on Saturday. But let's move on to our next slate of games. We have Sunday, the first game in the morning. We have the Minnesota Vikings going down to the Bayou to take on the Saints with Drew Brees, who are disappointed that they don't have a first round bye at 13-3. I might add. But anyways, Joseph, this is going to be a pretty good matchup, I think. But what are your thoughts and impressions on this matchup?
This is a really good matchup. Anytime you have a team like the Vikings who finished with 11 or 12 wins, however many it was, I can't remember off the top of my head, playing as a wild card team, we're in for a special matchup. But I'm gonna be honest, Mark. I'm really leaning towards the Saints in this one, and this isn't me being biased, picking against the NFC rival. I just think the New Orleans Saints are a much, much better football team, and they're playing much, much better football right now. Drew Brees, I know we talked about that. We were concerned that maybe when he came back from his injury, he'd slow down a little bit, but he just came back and he's playing like Drew Brees of old. He's playing like he hasn't, he's playing like a 30-year-old instead of a 40-year-old. And then we got Alvin Kamara, who, kind of struggled throughout the season, really wasn't doing much, but he's getting hot at the right time. He scored 4 touchdowns, I think, the past 2 weeks. So they're starting to utilize him. And then you got Michael Thomas on the outside. Lots of good things going offensively. They just dropped 40 points. I know it was against I know it wasn't against, I forget who they played last week. I know it wasn't a very good team, but,
Tampa, maybe?
I think it may have been Carolina. I want to say it was Carolina.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But, dropping 40 points just shows me that their offense is clicking at the right time, heading into the playoffs. And their defense is legit. Cameron Jordan's the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and they're just going to go after Kirk Cousins. So I'm feeling the Saints right now, Mark.
So I guess my initial impressions are, this is a very, very tough game to come in and win as your first, playoff game, Minnesota. It's just my first impressions are that the Saints are a better team pretty much everywhere, minus maybe receiving core. Mm-hmm. But the Saints are firing on all cylinders right now. They're getting hot at the right time. I think that's the best way to describe it. They have Drew Brees playing out of this world football. They have, Jared Cook, he's getting involved. Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray. They have that two-headed backfield again. Michael Thomas, who catches 98% of his targets. And then that defense is legit. So I am picking New Orleans to win this game. I think it's going to be a close game, but all that's, I think, dependent on what the running game looks like for Minnesota. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely the better team at home. A 13-win team on Wildcard weekend is just insane. Look for them to move on. But anyways, Joseph, let us move on to our last matchup of week 1 of the NFL playoffs, the wild card weekend. We have a very, very saucy matchup. You wouldn't think so based off the records, but the Seahawks coming in at 11-5, losing that heartbreaker to the San Francisco 49ers, going in to take on the Philadelphia Eagles at home. Joseph, I'll start us off on this one. This is a really, really interesting game. And you know what? These two teams are very similar to one another, where, they've had a lot of injuries on their team. Their team isn't as good as it has been in years past, but they've got two quarterbacks just who are adept at making plays, in Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz. I think this is going to come down to the battle of the quarterbacks, which quarterback performs better in Philadelphia. But Joseph, what do you think of this matchup?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Mark. I think both of these teams really are similar, that they both rely on their quarterbacks to make big plays, put up big numbers, and basically carry them to victories. And, right now, if I'm with that being said, I'm leaning a little bit towards the Seattle Seahawks, and I could see this being a really, really close game because Carson Wentz has been playing phenomenal this year. He's been so underrated this year, considering all the, considering he's been throwing to basically, fans could probably go out there and do better than his receiving core.
At Nelson Aguilar.
More shots fired than Mr. Aguilar, who, we won't get into that. We'll save that for the Nelson Aguilar podcast.
We will.
Catching Babies podcast, maybe.
Oh, man.
But right now, I'm feeling the Seattle Seahawks a little bit more. I like their weapons a little bit more on the outside. They have Tyler Lockett. They have DJ Metcalf. They have Beast Mode, who I think that signing was a little bit overhyped. I don't think he's going to be the player he once was, but I still think he can make an impact. And Carson Wentz is just going to literally be throwing to nobody. I don't know if Zach Ertz has been hurt.
Yes.
Sounds like
he may be back. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So just given all of that, I'm going to be going with the Seahawks in this one.
I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles, believe it or not. And it sounds crazy. These teams are literally identical. It's kind of crazy where they have these, awesome quarterbacks who've never won an MVP, who probably should have an MVP at this point. They have these not so good secondaries. The defenses haven't been so great. The offensive line hasn't been so great. The receiving talent, I guess Seattle gets the edge there, but I'm going to go with the home team, and I'm going with Carson Wentz right now. I think Carson Wentz has played some really phenomenal football up until this point, and I think Philly's going to be able to establish the run easier than Seattle in this matchup. And I think that's going to be all the difference in the world. I like Beast Mode coming back, but, I mean, he is old. He hasn't played for, a year and a half. So, what are you really getting from him? He's not in football shape, that's for sure. And that plethora of injuries to the running backs, I think, is really going to hurt Seattle. Russell Wilson's going to have a vicious pass rush after him all day. And I think Carson Wentz is going to get it done at home. So for that, I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles in this birdwatching match.
Well, while we're on the topic of the Eagles, Mark, this is, I'm looking this up right now. Zach Ertz, according to a former NFL team doctor, is unlikely to play.
Okay.
Miles Sanders is hurt.
Okay.
Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, and Derek Barnett were all limited at practice, so they're dealing with some injuries. Although Lane Johnson is, I heard, expected to play. He's expected to come back this week. And, Nelson Aguilar did not participate in practice at all. But, I don't think that'll actually hurt the team. That may actually benefit the team, having him off the field.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
But the Eagles are dealing with a whole bunch of injuries right now. That's something I failed to mention earlier. That's another big reason why I'm going with the Seahawks.
Yes, it is very interesting, but the Seahawks are also very injured as well everywhere. It's not good. But, I expect those people who are limited in practice to probably play. It is the playoffs. I mean, whether or not they're 100% healthy, that's a different story. But I expect them to play. But either way, I'm still going with Philly in this one. So, Joseph, pretty interesting that we, this entire season, we've kind of differ or had a lot of the same opinions, but as it comes to playoff football, we've kind of separated a little bit. What do you think happened here, Joseph?
I think it just comes down to the matchups. These are just all really, really good matchups that really could go either way. And I think both of me and you, we're similar in a lot of things, but I think right now we're starting to see, kind of where our, how do I want to phrase this? Kind of our style, if that makes sense. Our style, preferences, I should say. I don't know if that's the right way of saying this, but I think these are just all really good matchups and are a little bit harder to pick.
Yeah, very, very much so. Also, Joseph, some breaking news. They just announced Jason Garrett will not be back with the Cowboys. So There we go. You know, a team that probably should have been in the playoffs after the first few weeks of the
9
season.
years in the making.
9 years in the making. So, yeah, absolutely. There's our playoff episode. We hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We are definitely going to be kicking this content into overdrive. As Joseph and I get together, going to school, we're going to the same college, so we're going to have a lot more time to work on these playoffs and to get you all covered. But definitely share with your friends. You know, our Facebook page recently has been picking up a little bit of traction, so don't forget to do it there. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and this has been Mark.
This has been Joe.
And we are signing off. You guys have a good evening.